The line at the returns counter at Harwell and Crane moved slowly that Thursday afternoon, the way it always did in the hour before the evening rush. Eleanor Marsh had been standing in it for 11 minutes. She had counted, absently, the way a person counts when they are trying to stay patient. When she noticed the woman, she would think about that word later. Noticed. As though noticing were neutral, it wasn't. The woman was perhaps 70, slight, with close-cropped silver hair, and a camel-colored wool coat that had the quiet look of something expensive and long-owned. She carried a single structured handbag, dark burgundy, and she moved along the accessories wall with the unhurried attention of someone who had been in fine stores before and found nothing intimidating about them. Eleanor watched her the way one watches anyone in a slow line, without intention, with mild curiosity. Then the floor manager appeared. His name badge said Gideon Price. Eleanor had seen him before, stalking the floor with the particular energy of someone who had been given a small authority and had decided it was large. He was perhaps 40, broad-shouldered, with a lanyard that held a two-way radio and a phone, and he wore his confidence like a uniform. He came around the end of the accessories display, and he did not slow down. He moved directly toward the woman in the camel coat. "Ma'am." His voice carried just enough to reach the line. "I'm going to need you to stop right there." The woman stopped. She turned to look at him with an expression that Eleanor could not quite name. Not surprise, not fear, not anger. Something steadier than all of those. "There's been a concern raised about your bag," Price said. He did not lower his voice. "I need to ask you to accompany me to the service area, or to open the bag here." A beat passed. Eleanor felt the line go still. She was aware of the woman beside her, a younger woman in a puffer coat, leaning slightly forward. "He's going to check her bag," the younger woman murmured, as though reporting something that confirmed a prior suspicion. Eleanor said nothing. She was aware, with a mild shame she would not examine until later, that she had not immediately questioned the premise. She had simply watched, the way the rest of the line watched, with the quiet assumption that where there was smoke, there must be fire. The woman in the camel coat did not look like someone who would steal from Harwell and Crane. But she had not said that either, to herself or aloud. She had just watched. The woman in the camel coat regarded Gideon Price for a long moment. Then she said quietly, "All right." She did not fuss. She did not protest. She set the handbag on the glass top of the accessories case and unclasped it herself, with the same unhurried ease with which she had been browsing. The bag held a slim leather wallet, a folded silk scarf, a phone, and a small card envelope with the Harwell and Crane seal on it, a gift card, still sealed, the kind sold at the welcome desk near the entrance. Price looked at the contents. His expressions did not change. "The scarf," he said. "Where did you obtain it?" "I brought it with me," the woman said. "It's mine. I've had it for years. We sell that pattern." He reached toward it without touching it. "It's consistent with our stock. Many stores carry similar scarves," she said. "I purchased this one in Edinburgh some time ago. I'm happy to describe where, if that's helpful." It was not the answer he had expected. Eleanor could see it in the way his jaw tightened. "I'll need to verify that against our inventory," he said. He reached for his radio. "Of course," the woman said. She reclasped her bag. She stood with her hands folded at her waist and waited, and she looked at nothing in particular. Not the floor, not the ceiling, not the gathering attention of the people nearby. She simply waited, the way a person waits who has nothing to hide and no interest in performing distress for an audience. Eleanor felt something shift in her chest. It was not yet clarity. It was the first edge of discomfort with herself. Price spoke briefly into the radio, then lowered it. He crossed his arms. "Someone will be up shortly to confirm. I'd ask you to remain here." "I had planned to," the woman said. There was a long 4 minutes then. Eleanor counted those, too, without meaning to, during which the line began to move again, and Price stood his ground, and the woman in the camel coat stood hers. She did not take out her phone. She did not speak to anyone. Once, a sales associate passed by and glanced at the tableau, and the woman offered the associate a small, civil nod, the way one acknowledges a fellow human being in a hallway. The associate blinked and moved on. Then Eleanor saw the senior director come through the employees-only door. She knew him by sight, a tall man named Holt, who ran the floor with a manner that suggested he had seen every kind of difficulty and had learned to approach each one at the same measured pace. But he was not moving at his measured pace now. He was moving quickly, and his face was a color that Eleanor did not associate with his usual composure. A woman in a business suit followed him. She carried a slim folder and walked slightly behind, with the attentiveness of legal counsel. They came directly to Gideon Price. Holt said something to Price in a low voice. Eleanor could not hear it. She watched Price's expression travel from confidence to confusion, to something that was not quite alarm but was adjacent to it. Then Holt turned to the woman in the camel coat, and his entire bearing changed. "Mrs. Aldrin," he said, "I am deeply sorry. On behalf of the store, I want to. Let's not do this on the floor," she said simply, not unkindly. "That wouldn't serve anyone." Holt nodded once and extended his hand toward the corridor that led to the private hospitality suite. The woman in the camel coat lifted her handbag from the counter and followed him. The woman in the business suit fell into step beside them. Gideon Price did not move for a moment. Then a second member of the senior staff appeared at his elbow, quietly, as though placed there, and said something too low to hear, and Price's radio was removed from his lanyard, with a kind of practiced efficiency that made the gesture feel final. He was escorted off the floor through the employees-only door. He did not look back. The line at the returns counter started moving again. Someone, behind Eleanor, said, "What was that about?" And someone else said they didn't know. The younger woman in the puffer coat was already looking at her phone. Eleanor stood in the line and did not move for a moment, even though the space in front of her had opened. She thought about Edinburgh, about a scarf purchased in a city years ago, brought into a store in a city now, and the distance between those two facts being collapsed, in a moment, into an assumption. She thought about the word she had used, noticed, and how the woman in the camel coat had stood with her hands folded and waited, and had not shown anyone the cost of that waiting. She learned the rest from the store's public statement, which appeared on the company's official account that same evening. Harwell and Crane's parent holding company, Aldrin Farrow Properties, held the long-term lease and a significant equity stake in the flagship location. One of its founding partners was a woman named Constance Aldrin, who had been a silent presence in the company's structure for over 2 decades, and who had entered the store that afternoon with a sealed gift card she had purchased at the welcome desk for a granddaughter's birthday. The statement confirmed that the floor manager responsible for the incident had been separated from his position effective that day. Following a review conducted by the store's senior leadership, it confirmed that a formal written apology had been hand-delivered to Mrs. Aldrin by the store's legal office within the hour. It noted that the store would be conducting a full review of its customer interaction protocols. The statement used careful language, the way careful organizations do, but Eleanor had been in the line. She had seen Constance Aldrin stand at that counter with her hands folded and wait, and she had seen the room make its assumption, and she had made it too. She thought about composure, what it costs a person to hold it, and what it takes from the people who receive it as a gift they did not deserve. Constance Aldrin had not shouted, had not wept, had not demanded that the line bear witness to her humiliation. She had simply been what she was, and had waited for the truth to do what truth does when given the room. Eleanor did not know if that was strength or sorrow. She thought, standing at the counter, while the associate processed her return, that it was probably something a person earned over a long time, in rooms like that one, by not breaking. She hoped she would have held herself that way. She did not know if she would have. The associate handed her the receipt. Eleanor folded it into her pocket and walked out through the store's brass-handled doors into the cold afternoon, and she thought about what it meant to see a thing clearly, only after it was too late to have been the one who stood beside her and said, simply, that it was wrong.